All right, Chase, you good on the computer front?
Yep, I'm live. I decided to hit live right towards the tail end of that just because I know how
the right call.
Facebook is. No, next time that happens, man.
All the Facebook underscore users would not have been able to witness the beauty of the show if you didn't hit live on time.
No, that's a huge disappointing part, especially because I've been so active on fantasy football discussion, right? Like I've been on there like just hammering out answers to all these questions. Just literally nonstop work over there at Fantasy Football Discussion. And it's been awesome. The interactions, like jumping back up, it's been fun, man. I love that group. Love that group. Oh, Mike, we've gotten questions from that group all throughout Wednesday shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they tend to be really straightforward and easy to answer.
This must be the only good part of Facebook, then.
It's interesting.
I avoid Facebook so hard.
It's different. Yeah, I don't go on it at all. Chase knows we have those talks where he's like, "Hey, I need someone to run Facebook." I'm like, "Yeah, good luck. Ain't gonna be me, man. It's not gonna be me."
I technically have an account because I just can't, frankly, be bothered to delete it. But it's a cesspool. Anytime I've ever logged in, I immediately want to be off. I barely even want to be on Twitter, but that's like it's necessary. I need to get big enough where I have a Patreon. I can just hang out with my patrons, but that'll be many, many years away, I think. So we're currently in the Twitter streets where I enjoy 20% of the people very much, and then there's a lot of people that I deeply disenjoy. So, anyone watching right now, I enjoy you. I love you.
I love everybody on Twitter. My favorite days are when I get trolled because I have time. I will make some magic happen with some of the trolls. And the pro scout who came at me for saying that Rondale Moore was my running back 2 in this draft class was like my favorite day. He goes, "Do you not know he's a wide receiver?" And I was like, "Sir, he's 5'7". And he said, "You ever heard of Tyreek Hill?" And I said, "No, it's my first day." And he told me Tyreek Hill was the perfect comp. And I'm like, well, now I feel stupid. And I retweeted it because I thought comping Tyreek Hill to Rondale Moore was arguably dumber than me calling him a running back. The difference between me and him was I was joking. Rondale Moore does almost all of his work behind the line of scrimmage, sir, but that's cool. Keep doing you. So I retweeted that out and apologized to everybody that I called Rondale Moore a running back. I just thought he'd be a perfect fit because if the lineman stood up tall, he'd pop out like a magic show and then they wouldn't be able to tackle him. I said similar to Tutu Atwell turned sideways and just shuffled down the field. You couldn't see him, so you couldn't hit him. And this guy was thanking me for my apology and hopes that I learned something that day. It was wonderful. It was Twitter.
Do you think he was serious, or was it a double troll?
He was totally serious. No, he was telling me, he's like, I understand if you're new where you might get confused, but let me explain how positions work. Oh, it was magic. And I just sat back and I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, here's how it works. I'm like, cool. Yeah, so I love this stuff, man. I love it. I love when people call me dumb. It's my favorite time of day. So yeah, no, Twitter is I love 90% of y'all. The 10% I don't, you're blocked anyway, so you didn't see this.
I think I agree with you though. The only way to respond to bad faith is not like through good faith explanations. It's just through like snark and sarcasm. And you match bad faith with worse faith. That's the only way to go. Mm-hmm. And you just double down and people get really upset. Like if you're having an argument with someone in real life, right? Like, and you just start smiling at them and you just seem very happy. Like they just.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Shane Manila, Jakob Sanderson, and Chase Vernon.
Welcome in, everybody, to another Tuesday night edition of Dynasty Intervention. Chase, like, it's not even funny. It's funny when I'm talking about, like, killing birds, when I'm just in the middle of a random boring sentence. Only you're laughing. Whatever, Chase. We're here with Chase. And look, Shane was missing for the last couple of weeks. He missed last week. He's missing this week. He'll be back next week. Don't worry. He's still a part of the show. But we had to think who is the best possible person to replace Shane. We need someone who's very bitter. We need someone who's got a beard. We need someone from the northeastern United States. And so we brought this fine-looking daddy home to the show. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. This is my first doubleheader podcast, I think, in a long time. I'm getting too old for this, but replacing Shane and being a better looking version of him seemed like a good opportunity to double up on the show. So happy to be back.
We are happy to have you, Mike. It is always a pleasure. Specifically, we have you for a purpose near and dear to your heart. You're a Patriots fan, and we haven't talked about the AFC East yet, so we've been working our way through the divisions. We took a slight detour last week. We are back this week on our divisional previews. We're going to talk about the AFC East, but before that, every year, look, training camp is in full swing. We've officially pivoted to redraft season. That means everybody is going to get nothing but roto blurbs about how people are in the best shape of their life or they're injured, or if you're the New York Giants, there's an all-out brawl in the middle of your practice that involves your quarterback at the bottom of a pile, which is that's definitely the highlight today. So let's talk about some of the recent camp news. Let's just start with the brawl, man. What do you make of this? Mike, is this your revenge on the Giants for taking all your Super Bowl rings or what?
Oh, yeah, no, all of them. We didn't get any, you're right. But, yeah, no, I mean, Belichick has been attacking the Giants realistically for years, both New York teams, the Jets as well, with his one-day contract. And what they did was they sent him Joe Judge. And he sends him Joe Judge and says, hey, who do you think would be the best fit for an NFL team? And Belichick goes, hey, you ever seen Remember the Titans? Because Herman Boone would be a pretty good fit for your team. And he sends him over there to run laps and do push-ups. The only thing that he didn't do was actually do up-downs with his team like Dan Campbell. So he wasn't the craziest camp coach this week, but pretty dang close.
But now, I think Campbell's almost charming. Judge doesn't seem charming. He just seems like violent.
He's very so Judge has that Belichick tree of just angry. Matt Patricia is certainly that. Flores wasn't there long enough to become jaded. So I think he's the only one that escaped without being like overly angry and has some chance of success. But what Joe Judge is doing is crazy, man. It brings me back to like high school when my angry coach who spit when he talked used to make me run sprints until I threw up into my face mask. I didn't think anyone did that anymore, but apparently Joe Judge does, which is spectacular.
My favorite parts of that whole thing was like, the beat reporters there, and one of the beat reporters was like, the only thing, there's not a single voice going around practice right now. The only thing you hear is Judge's whistle and explicits. ... Lots of explicits. And then like 5 minutes later, he tweeted again. He goes, still, all you hear is explicits. No more whistle, just lots of explicits.
Tweet.
Oh, that is amazing. Yeah, of all the camps I could have gone to.
Giants practice. And I never, ever want to watch the Giants. Like when they play actual games, there's no team I want to watch less than a team with a really good defense and a completely incompetent quarterback and offensive line. That's like the last thing I want to watch. But I would have given anything to be at that practice today.
Did you see, too, he sent all the coaches into the locker room, and he said he wanted just one-on-one with the whole rest of the team. He's like, I don't want any coaches here. I don't want any eyes on me outside of these players. He sent all the coaches into the locker room. So
he's nuts, man.
Oh, man, it's amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Man, it's definitely very, very funny to watch this disaster in slow motion. It couldn't happen to a better team. Look, the Giants fans, they hate me because I don't like Kadarius Toney. And in fact, like they would go as far. I tweeted about it during the draft. People were like Googling. They're like going through my search history. They're like finding pictures of me in high school. They're making memes. They're obsessed. It's so funny to me. And I found a real tough guy today. I posted about the Giants brawl, and a guy whose name on Twitter was Joe Judge's my dad. Replied
Probably
to me,
unbiased, completely unbiased.
they replied to me, and they made a very, very explicit comment about my mother that I won't share, and then immediately blocked me before I had the opportunity to reply, because that's what tough people do.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm cool with Giants Twitter. We get along just fine, but I have seen their venom, and it's something. So,
oh man, Bob is talking to himself in the chat. Someone come in the chat
Bob.
and talk to Bob.
Hang on with
We don't
Bob,
want Bob
please.
talking to himself. That's the first sign of insanity. Look, let's talk about a team that makes me a lot sadder than the Giants. That's my team. That's the Colts. So it's normally a good thing, I think, if your quarterback is out 5 to 12 weeks, and then your best player is out 5 to 12 weeks, and then your best defensive player is also out, and your 2 starting tackles are out. Everything's fine. What do you make of the Colts? And specifically, I know we've all talked Wentz, and you were saying before you came on, we've talked, possible replacements for Wentz to death. But specifically, I think the more interesting thing is, what do you make of like Taylor, Pittman, these Colts options that are now not only losing Wentz for probably a couple weeks at least, maybe more, but now Quentin Nelson, who bizarrely has the exact same injury.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So I think everyone has hit on the fact of how good Quentin Nelson is. I'm not an offensive line expert, and I defer to people who are. And Brad Wire is someone who was tweeting out about the signing of Chris Reed, who he thinks could be at least a suitable type player with the way that he blocks. So I'm hopeful for Taylor. I still think Taylor is better than people give him credit for. Taylor is not a product of Quentin Nelson. Mm-hmm. Now, you did hit on the people that I am worried about. Michael Pittman, the shell of a wide receiver that T.Y. Hilton is now. Those
He's turning into his nickname. He's a ghost.
He is. And a guy that I was hoping for breakout season in Paris Campbell. I do have a lot of worries about the wide receiving core. As we were talking about earlier, the reports out of Frank Reich are that there was not any more extensive injury than what they had thought, which was essentially a broken foot from high school that had quote unquote popped loose. The way that it was described to me is if you super glue something back together, it'll hold for years, but that is still a little less than what you would want. Ideally, put it back to where it goes, make sure it sets. If this is 5 to 6 weeks, great, good for Wentz. But again, he is missing time with this new team. That timing should be off. I think this could throw off the passing offense for the first few weeks. As far as Taylor goes, I think he's going to be just fine. I think a lot of people have touched upon this, so this isn't new information. I'm not breaking ground. I just am. I have eyes like a lot of people who thought that this was the most spectacular thing they've ever heard of. Yes, this somewhat helps Nyheim Hines. Yes, You guys are geniuses that they're going to throw short because they have a quarterback who is hitting less than 50% of his passes when the defense is only half trying. That's a problem. Like we talked about, do they bring in maybe a veteran on a minimum contract? None of the names that you've heard
Brett Hundley.
Yeah, so you grab Brett Hundley. We talked about Hoyer, Brissett. We have a few guys in there. I just think if you're going to play Eason, honestly, Taylor is the only Colt other than Rodrigo that will see my starting lineup. If you're still playing kickers, go ahead. Rodrigo is still the man. But I am out on all of them. Not that I was all that high on the passing game to begin with, to be quite honest. Wentz isn't somebody who tends to hyper-focus on receivers. I'm not really certain who the best receiver is on the team. So I think it would be very Philadelphia Eagles-esque, not to make the obvious comp, but I do think you might have a bunch of 600 to 700 yard receivers. And given how deep the position is, and given how many receivers we expect to go over 1,000 yards this season, there was never really a big reason to be counting on these guys. They're more late dart throws anyway. So if you were relying on Pittman, Hilton, or Campbell, you can find sympathy in the dictionary. Not for me. I just think it was a bad roster build to begin with, if that's what you did. But I would expect realistically 4 to 6 weeks into the season before this passing offense starts clicking. And I just told you what I think clicking means to me. But I think Taylor will now be a bargain. He was already trending in that direction anyway. I think people forget just how talented this guy is.
Yeah, Chase, feel free to touch on that, but I want to give you a slightly different question. If you're a Superflex Dynasty guy and you have Wentz, and let's say you only really had 2 reliable quarterbacks, Wentz was one of them, and you have a decent team, what are you trying to do right now? If you're in that manager's shoes, are you just holding the fort and you'll just play a wide receiver in the flex, or are there some quarterback options that you think you can get at a fair value? Because I hate it. There's nothing worse than being in a super flex dynasty league, being the guy who needs a quarterback. Like, you might as well just walk through the halls with a big sign that says "kick me" right on your forehead. You go to like anyone. I had in one league where I had, like, I've went to many leagues, but I only had one where I really, really needed him from the start of the season, especially because my second quarterback to that league is Justin Fields. And I'm like texting a couple of guys who are like, "Hi, yeah, I'll give you Ryan Fitzpatrick for 2 firsts." I'm like, oh my God. Like, what are you doing, Chase, if you're in that situation?
So obviously you got to let the news die down a little bit, because people are going to know you're desperate and you're going to try and target a quarterback. Meanwhile, I'm going to keep an eye on preseason. I'm going to keep an eye on quarterback competition, but hopefully you got Easton, because honestly, there's no team that I think is better suited to endure an injury to the quarterback position than what the Colts are. Obviously, Quentin Nelson still hurts. Hopefully he comes back a little bit sooner rather than later. And if it's just fixing something that was like a minor issue, then hopefully he does come back early. But sitting there looking at it, I mean, Easton has a gun on him, right? He has an arm. If T.Y. Hilton can't stay healthy, get downfield, if Paris Campbell can get downfield, if Michael Pittman can be an intermediate to deep target player, I think that Easton still has some semblance of value. I'm not saying that he's going to be a quarterback one. I don't even know if he's a top 20 quarterback, but to sit there and have Easton on the back end of your rosters, I think it's still serviceable. I don't think it's great. I'm not saying that he's, a top end option, but he's serviceable. If he can get you a couple touchdowns in a game with 200 yards passing because he hits a couple guys deep, I think that's great. I think that's good, and I think that's worth of a starting position.
Oh, yeah. Pick up Jake. Heck, I started a guy named Jake Luton last year, and I don't think that he's a real person. I'm still not sure. I think that I just took acid in week 9 last year at a bad trip, and then I dreamed up that I started this guy named Jake Luton. I can't imagine it actually happened, but it happened. It did, and I think he won me a game. So any quarterback is doable. Let's touch on one other thing from camp here before we get into the AFC East stuff. All reports seem to be what's up, Faith, by the way. Oh, and Bob wants some big advice here from the Italian on the show. Ordering a meatball sub, should he has the bread toasted or should he take it raw? And you can interpret taking it raw however you like, Mike.
Interesting phrasing. Yeah, so with the meatball sub, you got to get that toasted because you need to melt the provolone as well.
Yeah, how do you do that?
You don't know, Bob. Do not take it raw in any sense of the word, sir. Get your sandwich toasted.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Faith is right. Phrasing. Let's quickly talk Niners here. So Jimmy Garoppolo, right? They obviously liked him so much, they valued him so much that they traded their entire future draft pick capital to go and replace him. But then they said, don't worry, he's our quarterback. Trey Lance, by all accounts, has been just crushing it in training camp. And then Kyle Shanahan comes out yesterday, says he's not going to get any first-team reps. Sure enough, he gets a few first-team reps in today. It seems like he's continued to build on his success, and by all accounts is the best quarterback at camp right now. Do you think Trey Lance is going to unseat Jimmy Garoppolo by week 1 of the season, Mike?
No, absolutely not. I think that this is a player who is going to excite you. He's going to make some plays. I saw the dime that he threw up the sideline, a little wobbly, but hit the target. Nice job there. I think that this is someone who they knew going in was going to be a project. They know that he's going to need some time to help read those complex defenses. I mean, you hear every coach talking about just the difference in speed, the difference in scheming, and what that can do to a rookie quarterback. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to throw him in there and have his confidence shot right out of the gate. There's just no reason for it. this isn't a team that I think is going to go to the playoffs with Trey Lance at quarterback. So I think you have that opportunity to work him in there and see what Garoppolo has. The fact is that they kept Garoppolo for a reason, despite his massive cap hit. Well, two reasons. Number one, he wouldn't restructure his contract for the deal the Patriots had in place with them. But number two, they're expecting him to play. They're not expecting a 21 to $23 million backup, and they could cut him for no cap hit. I mean, when you look at his contract, they could move on from him today if they didn't think he had some value. They kept him to play. I think what you're going to get from Lance is years of very good quarterbacking, just not right out of the gate. I think he needs a chance to see the game. He needs a chance to figure out the speed. I could see them possibly using some packages for him to get him in the game and get him up to game speed. But taking every snap for the Niners week one, I think it would be foolish, to be quite honest.
What did he play? Like 17 games in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like he has no real game experience. I mean, it was against subpar talent. So, I mean, Garoppolo, they're saying that he's looked better than he ever has, so far. Obviously, that's camp talk.
And like Lynch is saying that. No reporter that's at camp is saying that. They're saying he's fluttering picks to Fred Warner every day.
I mean, you can say that, but what's his record as a starter? I mean, the guy's a winner. You got to give him that at least. He
wins games. And the bigger aspect is it matters what the GM says, because guess what? Like, they have a say in who actually starts. So if Lynch is coming out and saying that, and all of a sudden they start Trey Lance out of nowhere, I think it becomes a big issue. Bentley, if you don't stop it. Sorry, guys.
Look, that might be what they're saying to the media. That might be what they're saying to teams who may want to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. That might be what they're saying to have Garoppolo's back right now. Look, I have been steadfast since, frankly, hey, I figured it out today. It started December of last year. I said that the Niners were going to trade out and draft Trey Lance. The second they made the trade, I was very positive it was going to be for Trey Lance. And since they've made that draft pick, I have been steadfast that Trey Lance will be starting week one. I remain still extremely confident of that. I think that this is a team – I might think a lot higher than of you, Mike, in terms of overall roster. I think it's a Super Bowl contending roster this year. I think that they can contend for the playoffs. As long as they get adequate quarterback play, whether that be from Garoppolo or from Lance. In my opinion, if they thought that they were a Super Bowl contender with Garoppolo, then they would have drafted a defensive player or an offensive player, someone to help make their team the best it could be with Garoppolo this year. Instead, essentially, to draft Lance and to not play him this year would be to forego the opportunity to add to the roster this year, forego that opportunity for next year. I think that they took Trey Lance because they think that their best chance to win a Super Bowl is with Trey Lance. To me, it doesn't make any sense to have cut Jimmy Garoppolo by now, because you don't know what Trey Lance is going to look like. If he comes into camp, you want to assess how he looks in camp. You want to give Jimmy Garoppolo the opportunity to retain the job. And I certainly think if we conclude training camp and Jimmy Garoppolo looks like the better quarterback than Trey Lance, then he should start week one, and he will start week one. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Trey Lance is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. I understand that he played at a much lower level, but everything that I've read on Trey Lance and everything that has been reported about him and why they took him is that there was no quarterback in this class that was more intelligent. There was no quarterback in this class that was more advanced in terms of his ability to read the defense. I think that Shanahan is going to want to use his new toy as quickly as possible. And frankly, I think that if in practice for 4 weeks, he's going out and outplaying Garoppolo every single day in practice, and then he goes and outplays him every week in the preseason, then I don't think he's going to have much of a choice. He's going to play the better quarterback. And I think that it just depends on who that better quarterback is. I think so far it's been Lance, and that does not surprise myself personally.
So real quick, when it comes to that, we have a competitive team with Jimmy Garoppolo there, right? Like, he wins all these games, his record shows for it. However, when he comes out, then, the record essentially flops, like it goes the opposite direction. I think that they got to a point where they're like, we cannot afford to bypass another season if Garoppolo gets hurt.
You don't trade 2 first-round picks for a good backup quarterback. You could have signed Jacoby Brissett for that.
He's not going to be a quarterback. We saw what happened with Patrick Mahomes, right? We saw what happened with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Those guys didn't start from day one. They were there as an insurance policy, essentially, to come in if they were ready. But none of those guys were polished off. And we saw what happened in each one of their first seasons. Sure, Lamar Jackson had a decent, start to it. But overall, I mean, these were not quarterbacks who were essentially ready right off the bat. And it kind of showed to an extent, I should say, outside of Patrick Mahomes. But sitting there and looking at it, they go into their second year now. They still have 4 years remaining on a rookie contract, if you include that 5th-year option. So they're they don't care about this year, right? They want to win this year. And then if they can throw Trey Lance into it the following year, it's that much more of a bonus. However, it's an insurance policy to Jimmy Garoppolo just in case he gets hurt, because if Jimmy Garoppolo is in, they win games, and they know that.
I agree they want to win this year. I'm just saying there's one quarterback on that roster that can do a hell of a lot of things that the other guy can't. So I think that they're going to go with the quarterback who can win them the most games. I agree with that. I just don't think it's particularly close who that quarterback is. I think they had a fantastic team 2 years ago. I mean, look, is Jimmy Garoppolo better than Nick Mullins? Yeah, I agree. Nick Mullins sucks, dude. Like, Nick Mullins is so bad. I agree that Garoppolo is capable. I just think Lance is better, and I think that they would, if Lance is showing what he can do every day and he looks like the better quarterback, then that's the guy they're going to play. But we'll see how it ends up in week one. I'm continuing to be confident in this one, but I understand that definitely the majority is with the two of you folks on Jimmy G starting week one. Quickly, I just want to talk about budget golf. If Jimmy Garoppolo does not make the 49ers week one roster, if they decide to cut him, they could let him go for nothing like Mike says. He might want to be looking into some budget golf options while he looks for his next salary. And if you want to join Jimmy on the golf course, I bet Jimmy would look great on the golf course, by the way. He's got fantastic hair. He's got a tan. And, look, if you want to do a little doubles with Jimmy and the wife, I mean, I think everybody would be down to do that. So why don't you head to budgetgolf.com? The link is in the show description for budgetgolf.com. You can head there. Any orders over $150 are free shipping. They have deals right now, 57% off on golf shoes. That includes FootJoy golf shoes, Skechers golf shoes, Puma golf shoes. Because if you're showing up on the golf course with Jimmy GQ, you need to be looking good. So head on over to Budget Golf. That's $150 and over. You get free shipping. They got tons and tons of great deals, more than the ones that I just said. And then you'll be able to hit the links with Chase. You'll be able to hit the links with Mike. You'll be able to hit the links with Jimmy. Chase, are you going to even be here for the rest of the show, or are you heading over to Budget Golf?
Dude, I'm already on the site right now because I forgot to check out the deals because they refresh their deals like every Tuesday, and you get a whole new week set of deals. So I'm actually on the site right now. I'm not going to lie. I need to get a new set of clubs.
All right, that's going to wrap it for our ad read here. Let's get back into it, and we're going to go into the AFC East. Mike, we're starting with you. We've already alluded to it. Look, we usually start with this team automatically, because usually we just start with whoever won the division last year. And shockingly, for the first time in a long time, it was not the New England Patriots. So let us know, you're a Pats fan. How are you feeling about the outlook here for the Patriots in 2021?
They'll be fine. I think this is probably an 11-6 team. I think that they are going to grab a wild card spot. I still think this is the Bills division, but I think this will be the second place team. I think the Miami Dolphins are wildly overhyped. And I think just when you look at this defense alone, they're probably going to be winning games 20-17. But this will be, make no bones about it, one of the top defenses in the NFL this year. This will be a top 5 defense. And what we've seen year in and year out is those teams win games. You couple that with the greatest coach of all time and just a moderately competent offense. That is as far as I'm willing to go with my team's offense. It'll be good enough. I think you're going to harken back to the way that the Ravens were winning games, Joe Flacco's Ravens, Trent Dilfer's Bucks. You've seen this blueprint that he's putting together. How they ran it with the Giants for a long while with Phil Simms as more of a game manager type. This is Belichick's comfort zone. This is what he wants to do. And what I think everybody has been focusing on with this team is on the offensive side of the ball. That's what we tend to do as fantasy analysts. This defense has some up-and-comers. Watch Uche, who will be one of the best pass rushers in football this year. On efficiency alone was one of the best last year. Just didn't see as much of the field you would have liked to see. Kyle Duggar is an absolute missile at safety. And he's obviously backed up by what's going to be a Patriots Hall of Famer in Devin McCourty. You still have the stud outside cornerbacks with Gilmore and Jackson. And then you add Judon to the mix and Dante Hightower coming back to fill that middle. This defense haven't even touched on. Winovich also coming off the edge.
It's a top 5 D for sure.
It's outstanding.
At least top 10. Yeah.
Yeah, it's outstanding. And what's going to happen is they are going to run the ball. They are going to get back to the Patriots offense with the tight ends that they picked up, with the players they picked up. You're going to see a lot more crossing routes, a lot more high percentage, getting the offense just not to lose the game. And given the division that they have and given the schedule that they have, don't sleep on the fact that they have a third place schedule as well. This is a team that will win more games than you expect.
Let's dive into probably a similar question to what we were just talking about, the 49ers. I remember a time when everyone thought that the 49ers were going to be taking Mac Jones at number 3 overall. What a time that was to be alive. Mac Jones did not go number 3 overall.
No, he did not.
He fell to 15 overall, correct? 15 overall to the New England Patriots.
Yep.
And so that's probably the top question on people's minds when they think about this offense, especially just because of the disparity of offense that you sort of envision with a Cam Newton versus a Mac Jones. You couldn't find 2 more polar opposite style quarterbacks. How long do you think it is until Mac Jones seizes the starting job? Or at all this year?
All offseason, I've been pretty steadfast that he's going to be the week 1 starter. I do believe that there have been a lot of signs throughout the offseason pointing to him being the week 1 starter. First of which was the signing of Brian Hoyer. When you take a look at who they brought in and where they line up, Stidham and Hoyer backing up Mac Jones makes a lot more sense when you're shaping an offense than it does with Cam Newton. So that's been what I've been touting all offseason until today. Until today, when Belichick addressed the media and gave the remark that I was hoping never to hear. He had been all positive, talking about how great Mac Jones was, and then hit him with he has a ways to go. Like every rookie, he needs to learn to read the schemes. He needs to learn the speed, and all of a sudden gave him the Belichick kiss of death that he gives to rookies.
Do you think he'd be better off if he didn't make him wear 50?
I think that would help if he wasn't a linebacker. Yeah, that would probably.
Yeah, because it's the worst look I've ever seen in my life as a quarterback wearing 50.
Oh, it's brutal. But my whole thing is that I'm pretty simple. You get 5 years of a rookie contract like we talked about, and Mac Jones was the one who came in with the highest college QBR of all time. He was the one who was running the style of offense they were looking for. He was the one that actually is downgraded in weapons now, but he has shown that he can run a pro style of offense. So what I'm trying to figure out is when you have a quarterback on this rookie deal, when you have a team that, despite what I just told you about their record, is not a true Super Bowl contender, they'll get into the playoffs. They'll be a first round out. That's who they are. Why wouldn't you put this kid in? He is, much like you talked about with Trey Lance, supposedly the quarterback that's going to be able to read the playbook best. He's supposedly the one that's going to be able to make the reads. He was making 3 to 4 reads in college. When you look at the weapons he had, he was going back and forth. Everything about him shouts put him in the game because he's not going to lose it for you. Where I'm a little worried about Lance playing against such a drop-off in talent. When you look at what Alabama played against, about as close as you're going to get to the Jets, to be quite honest. He should be just fine. I guess I don't get it. But we talked about the one thing that's most important, and we talked about this backstage, which is what is everybody's goal? You talked about the 49ers' goal is to win the Super Bowl. We've talked about other teams who have goals to basically grow their young talent. Belichick's goal is to win the all-time wins record from Don Shula. So what Belichick is going to do is what's best for Belichick, which is going to be who's going to win him games. And if he's nervous about Mac Jones, then Mac Jones won't see the field, and he'll hope Cam Newton's legs will steal a couple games. What I can tell you is if you have Cam Newton on your fantasy team, congratulations. If you have him on your real team, they'll be mediocre. If Cam Newton starts every game 9-8, never mind 11-6.
Chase, let's get you in here. Chase, you're on mute. You're on mute, Chase.
My bad. All right, so I rewatched the film today, right, on the Chargers game, right, when they shut out the Chargers, 45-0.
There you go. Way to be a film grinder, Chase. Proud of you.
It was funny. Well, I was sitting there watching, like, it was mainly special teams and whatnot that set him up in positive situations. But Cam Newton ended up throwing for 69 yards, while Jarrett Stidham came in, and in 2 passes, Jarrett Stidham threw for 61 yards, so it's only 8 yards less. And just sitting there and looking at it, man, like, this is a team that had most of their defensive players opt out of the 2020 season. Like, the starting Patriots weren't even there, and they still ended up, pulling it out. So, or pulling out a decent record with Cam Newton, who dealt with COVID, whatever the case is. So regardless, like, I know that Mike said he's called a 10-7 or 11-6 season. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, but not that much because you saw what they did even with backups on the field the entire time.
Yeah. When
it comes to this matchup, right, with Mac Jones, Cam Newton, I actually talked with Mike recently about this into depth where it came to this article that I was writing about Mac Jones and how I thought the Mac Jones was in a great spot overall. And I think Mac Jones will end up being the starter come 2022. But this year, I think it's still Cam Newton's team up until he loses it, very similar to Garoppolo. Like, he has to go out there and lose it. I don't think it's going to be gift wrap for him, where a player plays better practices in the season, whatever the case is. It's going to be Cam Newton's job to lose. Does Cam Newton keep that? I think it's possible. I mean, we're sitting there, we're watching Trent Brown come in, so he's actually going to left tackle. They bring in some tight ends, which we know that Cam Newton actually operates with tight ends very, very well. We saw it with Greg Olsen throughout his time.
Yeah, because he can complete passes to them without breaking his shoulder.
Exactly, and it's almost like a toss forward, and how he overthrows receivers constantly. He can't really throw it over their head because the tight ends are bigger. No, but in all reality, he likes these bigger, more physical type receivers. So I think that Cam Newton overall is going to have a better season. I'm not saying that it's going to be a Pro Bowl type season or anything like that, but I could still see him finishing up with probably QB 18 to QB 24 type numbers, which as long as he protects the ball and the Patriots do their job on defense, which they're going to do, there's no doubt in my mind, then I don't know how Cam Newton loses this job. Now, when it comes to Mac Jones, I like Mac Jones. The guy is extremely accurate. I mean, he's throwing dime on top of dime on top of dime every chance that he gets, but how is he going to do when he doesn't have receivers that have 3 yards of separation per target?
You ever seen Jakobi Meyers run a route, dude?
I like Jakobi Meyers personally.
Love Jakobi Meyers.
And I like Nelson Aguilar. So, I mean, sitting there looking at it, I do like the situation and whatnot, but I think Mac Jones is going to need one more year. And I also don't think they want to throw him behind, this offensive line that just lost Joe Thuney. So I think that sitting there looking at it, I think they want him to sit in the system one more year. It's a very complex system. You have to know where to go with certain routes. And that's why also Bill Belichick hates the rookies. It's not that he hates them. He just wants them to understand the system in full before he puts them on the field.
Well, we'll see. I'm interested on this one. I think I've had kind of an iffy take. Like, I don't feel like I have a read on Belichick ever. I'm not a Patriots fan, so I don't follow their beats like as close as Mike would. And Belichick just says so little that I just really struggle to get a read on what he actually wants to do. Even more so than most coaches, where I never really know what they want to do. My only take is that I think whoever starts week 1 is probably going to start for a heck of a while, just because the offense that you designed for Cam versus Mac has to be so different that I think that if you're going to start Mac, like week 1 is kind of the time to do it. I think it's going to be hard to just switch from Cam to Mac in the middle of like week 4. I think that's quite a shock to your offense and how you want to run things, unless Cam is just terrible. It doesn't give you a choice. I mean, the one thing with Belichick, right, even more than Shanahan and way more than like Matt Nagy, is he doesn't have to give a shit what anyone outside the building thinks he should do with the starting quarterback, right? Like whatever Belichick wakes up and thinks he wants to do, he doesn't have to care about Cam's feelings, doesn't have to care about Mac's feelings, doesn't have to care what the fans think. Like, he's won a crap ton of Super Bowls. He is in charge of the New England Patriots for as long as he wishes to be in charge of the New England Patriots at this point, I would say. So he's going to do what he thinks is right. It's different than in Chicago where, if Andy Dalton goes out and loses the first 2 games, like, Matt Nagy is going to be burned in effigy in the middle of the street if he doesn't start Justin Fields in week 3. Like, the fans will not give him a choice. And that's not going to happen with Belichick. So I think we could see this go on with Cam for quite a while if he wants it to. I just tend to think that Cam has a bit of a higher ceiling than like Dalton or Garoppolo does. If he is truly healthy, if he is fully recovered, it's easier for me to envision him actually looking quite good. It's also easy for me to envision him going out week 1 looking like a complete train wreck. So I can see it either way. Let's just quickly talk about these weapons because we're already going a little bit long, Chase. Yeah.
I do want to point out the fact that Stidham played 5 games last season. So I don't think that the system has much to do with it. I think that, he's going to make it interchangeable for both Mac Jones and Stidham.
Cam got like COVID too, right? Like,
yeah, in one of the games, but he still came in and replaced him in 4 other games.
I don't think were any of those competitive though. Like those were like Cam was just like either. Well, one was the one you mentioned where they were winning by like 40. There were others, right, where Cam was he was just awful. Well, we'll see.
Games they were, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Let's quickly talk on these weapons here. This is the only team where I think there's 4 different guys who could realistically lead the team in targets. And that's not even to say anything of James White. Like who's the guy that you would be most targeting in fantasy between, I assume, Aguilar, Myers, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, maybe Kendrick Bourne? Mike, who do you think is the guy?
So there's only two guys that realistically I think will lead the league and lead the team in targets, and that's Hunter Henry and Jakobi Meyers. Those are your really only two options. I think Myers will end up somewhere between 90 and 95 targets, and he is almost free. And I think Hunter Henry, while he's a worse overall football player than Jonnu Smith, is a better fit for this offensive Belichick type guy. I think he will lead the team in red zone targets and also tight end targets. So those are the two guys that I'm most comfortable with, especially where you talk about with Cam Newton under center. I really want nothing to do with Nelson Aguilar and the game that he plays. I just don't think they mesh very well. I mean, basically they probably overpaid him because he's going to be a decoy. Maybe that's why he got $3 million more a year than he actually deserves. But I just can't see targeting Aguilar when he has Cam Newton. And you made a great point, like, who's going to be around for a while. Whoever starts week 1 will probably be starting up until week 10 if you look at their schedule. It's soft as can be. It's soft as Charmin. So I think that it's an easy schedule, and I think what they're going to do is just pound the rock against these weak teams. And I just think that there's not a ton of gold in the passing game, but at the cost of acquisition, what you're looking at for ADP, Henry and Myers are the two people you're targeting.
That makes a lot of sense. Chase, who's your guy?
I feel like they're reverting back to like the 2010, 2011 time period. I think it was 2011 when Gronk was drafted. Am I correct, Mike? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I don't, but that sounds about right.
I just went back and looked at it just at that year, and I'm looking at the targets. I might be wrong on which year they were drafted, but
2010.
2010. Okay. The second year then, I mean, they're only sitting 11 targets out from each other when it comes to Aaron Hernandez and Gronkowski. One saw 113, the other one saw 124.
Wow.
So I don't know if the separation, they could be reverting back to that type of offense. I don't know if the separation in targets is really going to be there for Jonnu versus Hunter Henry. Now, obviously, Hunter Henry's probably going to play the Gronkowski role, correct?
No, Jonnu Smith will play the Gronkowski role.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, if you try to make these matchups, which is really dangerous because these aren't those players. But when you look at Gronkowski, he was playing a classic tight end role. Gronkowski, far better blocker than Aaron Hernandez. Aaron Hernandez was basically a slot receiver at that time.
Yeah.
But I think where you have to be careful is twofold. Number one, when you take a look at that team in particular, the 2011 Patriots, and you look at the talent that these two guys had and put aside what happened with Aaron Hernandez, obviously shocking. We don't want to delve into that part of it. Aaron Hernandez was crazy talented. Neither of these tight ends would even make that team. That's how good these two guys were. But when you look at Jonnu, he's going to play the classic Gronkowski role. You're thinking Chase, which is going to be the guy who is going to be the better run blocker, the guy who's going to bleed out. And what you're going to see from Henry, which is why I actually prefer him in far as the targets goes, is he's going to be more of your route runner, not expected to perform as much in the running game. And I think that will lead to more red zone targets. I think the difference is what made Gronk so spectacular and why I don't think Jonnu really explodes in this way is because Gronk is the greatest tight end to ever live, and Jonnu is Jonnu. So I think when you look at the role, it won't equate to the same target share, if you will, because the role itself, Jonnu would have to be as multifaceted as Gronk to make that happen. So I think while he's going to be staying in the block more, he's just not good enough to really bring that part of his game out. He's never shown that. I mean, he's shown to be a yak monster when he gets the ball, but he hasn't shown to be a guy who's going to run those classic Gronk seam routes. He hasn't been that guy who's going to be impossible to cover, which Gronkowski was. If you remember, he was too big for safeties, too fast for linebackers. He was the classic. You can't cover prime Gronkowski, impossible. So he was throwing guys, he was pancake blocking fools and then getting out on routes. John was not that guy. It's just
you're just not that guy, pal.
Yeah, I like him. John, who hope for the best, bro. Cheering for you. I know Rob Gronkowski, and you, sir, are no Rob Gronkowski.
What are the chances that he's the goal line back? What are the chances that Johnny ends up being the
couple
goal line
times?
back?
Oh man, they'll slip him in there. I'd give him 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 or 3.
I like it.
It could be like around 5. I really do. Like, I feel like he could actually become a goal line back because they don't have one.
Oh, come on.
They have Damien Harris. He's like, and they have Cam Newton.
Cam Newton.
Cam Newton's the best goal line back in the league.
But yeah, no, I think that it's going to be Damien Harris this year, and I think next year it'll be a combo of Harris and Ramondre.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to agree with you, Mike. But Hunter Henry has become one of my favorite values in best ball. He's virtually free, and I think it's interesting. Like, I'll just say it. Everybody thinks that Hunter Henry's going to block and Johnny's going to run the routes because Johnny's black and Hunter Henry's white. Like, I'm going to be honest. I'm pretty sure that that's actually why a lot of people think about this, that don't actually track the stats, that don't track these players.
Yeah, it's backwards. John will be the one.
Like, if you look at John, who's rolled like in his deployment in Tennessee, like he actually blocked a lot so that like dad runner Anthony Ferkser was out running routes. Like John is a really excellent blocking tight end. Hunter Henry, I don't think particularly is, especially after his injuries. And especially in terms of the kind of routes they win on, right? Like John, who's the athletic guy, he's a bit more of a straight line player. I could easily see him doing block and pop routes where he's getting yak, and then I could see them trying at least to work him up the seam using his wheels, which, you know, definitely a faster player than Hunter Henry, whereas Henry might be running more of those choice routes, those options routes, those dig routes over the middle, a little bit more of a refined player, a little bit more of a technical player, and he's been winning on those types of routes, you know, his whole career with Phillip Rivers. Bob, I tend to be with you there on Cam majority of the season.
Me and Bob have been fighting over that for all season. So what I will say, Jacob, is I hope it has nothing to do with race whatsoever. I think, honestly...
I'm not saying it has to do with Belichick. I just think fantasy gamers are dumb, and they think that white guys block.
No, I think for fantasy gamers, what it is they've been waiting for Jonnu Smith to break out and be that tight end that people love to be right. And they have been pining for this take for 2 years, not realizing that Jonnu is just one of those better NFL players than he is fantasy players. And the quicker you adjust to that reality, the better off you are. He is an outstanding NFL player, and I love having him on our team. He's just not going to be a fantasy stud, and especially not in this roster.
The thing with Jonnu is he was actually really terrible at pass blocking, although he had to face a lot of defensive ends last year because of the injury to Taylor Lewan.
Lewan.
Yeah. So he ended up getting matched up against, you know, defensive ends versus linebackers, but he was not good in pass blocking last year. He allowed a whole bunch of pressures, a whole bunch of sacks. I remember going back and looking at the numbers towards the tail end of the season because I was sitting there looking at him like, why is he not getting these targets? Why is he not getting the touches? And it was because he was blocking so often. And then I went and watched the game from for it, and he was not good at pass blocking. So I really don't understand why he was actually in that role in the first place. So that's what made me believe that he could actually play out of the slot. Is because when he did play out of the slot, he was actually overly productive.
We will definitely see how that gets deployed. Let's move on quick. We are falling behind here. We're going to go into warp speed. We're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills. We're going to do this even faster than the Brian Daboll offense. Look, first thing here with the Bills, I think that's most interesting, you know, and we'll define this team, whether they're a Super Bowl contender or more of a pretender. Was this Josh Allen transformation for real? I've virtually never seen anything like it that I can remember, where a quarterback goes from probably one of the, if not the least accurate quarterbacks the entire NFL to arguably the best quarterback in the entire NFL last year, not just fantasy, like actual real life. Is this for real? Do you think that we see a Josh Allen that is, you know, the same as last year's or improved? Is this offense going to continue to take that step forward? Or are we going to see a little bit more aggression from Josh Allen? Chase, I'll let you start this time.
Dude, it's Josh Allen's a monster back there, but the biggest thing is Brian Daboll, who you brought up. Like his play calling's incredible. The way that he spreads out this offense is great. I mean, his best weapon was Stephon Diggs, who I'm not taking away from Stephon Diggs, but like we didn't consider him anything prior to coming to Buffalo, and now he's just coming out and showing out like crazy. Meanwhile,
Bad people didn't.
Okay. Then you sit there and you look at Gabriel Davis, right, who was a 4th round rookie, I believe, 5th round rookie. Yeah. Like, you know, like it's nothing. Like John Brown was hurt half the season. He didn't have any good tight ends. Tyler Croft.
What about 86 overall Cole Beasley? Same as A.J. Brown. Madden says he's just as good.
So, oh, God, don't even get me started on the Madden rankings. I will literally go into a whole different rant on the Madden rankings. You do not
We don't
want
want
me
that.
to
We
get
don't want
started.
that. We don't want
No.
that. Come back.
No.
Come back.
So sitting there looking at it, I mean, like he has no running back. He has nothing on his team yet. This offense is still very efficient overall. And Brian Dabble should be credited with that. And I was like salivating in the mouth of the fact that Brian Dabble could have gone to the Chargers and ran this offense for the Chargers and ran the team and developed Herbert, which would have been even more incredible. I feel like it's a combination of Carson, Jordan Palmer, the quarterback coach, working for the past 3 years with Josh Allen, Brian Dabble calling the perfect offense for him, and Josh Allen putting in the work ethic that he needed to put in. And I think that he could end up being a relevant quarterback for many, many years to come if he can make sure that he stays out of harm's way and stops playing like a damn linebacker or like a, LeGarrette Blount out there trying to break tackles from the linebackers at least. I don't know. I like Josh Allen. I think he's going to be a force to reckon with for many, many years to come.
What do you think, Daddy?
So as much as
That's so great.
yeah, that's weird. So
We want to do that all night.
it's weird that I don't even flinch anymore because it happens so much. But as much as I respect my colleague Chase's opinion, Stephon Diggs is arguably the most efficient receiver in the NFL. What he did with Minnesota, you would have seen coming if you just extrapolated out how many targets he was going to get on the Bills. What he was able to do with 94 targets, 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns, you bring that up to 166, you should have seen 1,500 yards coming. Literally, it's just math at this point. So once you put Diggs in a number one receiver role instead of having to share with Adam Thielen, this was pretty obvious that Stephon Diggs was going to raise Josh Allen's efficiency because he is a true number one receiver. Now you couple that with everything that Chase said, because the rest of it was right, just horribly wrong on Diggs. We have ourselves really what's a perfect combination. I do agree that what Palmer did working on his mechanics, he did look like a different quarterback. Also, just his comfort level, what you saw was he was not as quick to tuck the ball and run, which is what you saw 2 years ago, which is he was playing more like a Lamar would, where the second an option came up to run, he was taking it instead of trying to extend the play. That's what we saw from Allen. So there's nothing that leads me to believe that he's going to go back, because his reality has changed so much. This wasn't just a different quarterback. It was a different quarterback with a better weapon and with the better offensive structure. Now, all of a sudden, you add even further into, Emmanuel Sanders, who granted is not going to light the world on fire, but a very professional route runner coming in. Things honestly could even look up for Josh Allen. You talk about a completely healthy Zach Moss, which we didn't see last year. He wasn't healthy for all of last year. In fact, I'm expecting possibly even better from Josh Allen. And if you want to check my record, I did predict him as the QB1 for 2020 in November 2019. So I've been kind of watching him for quite a while. So took all your heat. Yeah, I memorized all of the trash talk. I didn't pull the receipts, but you all know you were wrong and Daddy was right, and it'll happen again.
I love Josh Allen, by the way. Josh Allen was my quarterback. I have him everywhere. Almost every single Dynasty league, I have Josh Allen. Absolutely love the guy. Love Justin Herbert the same.
I couldn't agree more. And I think for Diggs especially, people have been talking about, it's going to regress. He's never done this before. I think it might even actually progress. I honestly have Stephon Diggs as my wide receiver 1 this year in redraft formats. If you look at last year, he started out very well, and everyone was super hyped about it because, he was crushing the ridiculous ADP that he had of like wide receiver 26. But he was sort of a mid-tier wide receiver 1. He even got better as the year went on. He even saw higher target share. His touchdown variance finally started to work in his favor. He was running ice cold on touchdowns early in the year for how many targets he was getting. And that should make sense, right? Everybody was, why were people fading Stephon Diggs? They thought Josh Allen was bad. He wasn't. And they figured new wide receiver changing teams might not get adjusted right away. And the crazy thing is people didn't realize it, but that actually kind of happened. His role really did increase over the course of the year. And you look at the way that they used him versus how Minnesota used him. Right, Minnesota, they wanted to run the ball. So they had, Diggs, they had Thielen. Diggs was the deep threat in the offense. And they really used Diggs to get downfield, create splash plays off play action, and otherwise draw a lot of coverage. So they had to stay in 2 safety looks so they could run Dalvin Cook on 2nd and 10. That was what they wanted to do. Buffalo, totally different offensive scheme. It was the most pass first offense in the league last year. They used Diggs, who's one of the best route runners in the league. Everybody's been saying that since, pretty much his 2nd season. Instead of running fly routes all the time, they had him doing everything. He was running slants. They were using him as a yak option with screens. They were running hitches. They were running sluggos. Every route in the tree, that guy was running. And they were using him as a focal point of the offense all over the field on all situations, on all downs. They were even using him as a proto running game, running slants and screens and stuff. I think that there's no reason why that's going to change this year. The only other thing I want to talk on with the Bills here, because I'm all in about the Bills too. Mike, you mentioned Zach Moss. Is any running back going to be useful this year? Personally, I'm like a Moss guy by default. I never wanted to be a Moss guy. I certainly wasn't a Moss guy coming out of the draft. But now I just sort of look at it and I'm like, man, he's going like in round 10. And all the other guys that are going where he's going in best ball or even in Dynasty are either straight up backups, halfway starters and terrible offenses, or guys in like 3-part committees. I'm like, Zach Moss, a 2nd-year player, might play in the best offense in the league and could potentially be getting 60-70% of the snaps. I just have to get behind Zach Moss, and it kind of hurts me. But what do you guys think of him, or are you more Singletary folk?
No, you hit the nail on the head, which is the cost of acquisition. Zach Moss is a guy you want. And the reason why Zach Moss is the one that you want is that no carry is more valuable than the 6-point carry. You want the guy who's going to be in there. Devin Singletary is doing his work between the 20s and has to break it to really have a valuable game. And let's face it, he proved last year he's not a guy who's up to break it very often. And they just don't target their running backs enough that even being the pass catching back is valuable in PPR formats. So I am going Zach Moss by default. I'm also not a huge Moss guy. However, when you look at what you're getting, if you avoid that running back dead zone, if you're really going heavy wide receiver between rounds 3 and 10, which you should be, in case I wasn't insinuating that heavy enough, then you're looking at Zach Moss, Gus Edwards type players. Those are the 2 names that just keep popping up on my roster, because it's hard to tell the difference in talent between all these guys. So I will go with opportunity, and Zach Moss certainly has that.
Moss and Edwards are my 4th and 5th most rostered running backs in best ball. So I'm with you right there. Chase, what do you think of these backs?
So first off, let me just say I don't like any of the backs on the Bills, right? Like Devin Singletary, I didn't like him prior to watching his game film with preseason with the Bills back in 2019. He got me a little bit, and so I hopped on the bandwagon to an extent. I think that there are certain players like Cooper Kupp who don't show off their athleticism, yet still end up becoming worth rostering because they improve as a pro. I thought Devin Singletary could be one of those players. I don't know if that's the case anymore. However, I do want to throw out one sleeper. We don't need to talk about it that much, but there's been news coming out that Matt Breida looks really good. If he has the speed necessary to be able to break runs, right? Like to break long runs. And if Josh Allen can spread this offense out,
I can't with Matt Breida again. Don't make me get sucked in on Breida again. Please, Chase, please.
If they can get their players downfield and they can spread out these defensive backs, and he can get past that line of scrimmage and get free, like you're talking about, how many breakaway runs could he see this year if something happens to Moss? If something happens to Singletary on 3rd downs, let's just say, because neither one of those guys are 3rd down backs, if he can, accumulate, let's just say 8 to 10 breakaway runs this upcoming year, which are runs over 15 to 20 yards, depending on, what
when you say breakaway runs, that means that he goes for a run and his leg breaks just from the pressure of it hitting the ground.
That's possible too. I mean, all 3 of these running backs could end up having some sort of issue, but I just want to throw that out there as a sleeper, especially for best ball leagues. The Matt Breida could be an option. Okay. And if you have him, I would not drop him until we see the preseason.
All right. I can't respond to Matt Breida. I've loved Matt Breida. I love Matt Breida. I love Matt Breida. I can't do it again. I cannot do it again. So I guess this will be the year that he burns me.
Spend 30 minutes and just look into it.
All right, real quick here, Miami Dolphins. Mike, your hot take, at least hot take based on how the gambling market sees it, is that the Patriots would be better than the Dolphins this year. I'm assuming that means you are not a believer in Tua Tagovailoa.
I'm not. I think he is a good quarterback. I think he is a solid quarterback. I think the hip injury may have taken the chance of us seeing Tua be an elite quarterback. And I think when you look at this team, that's what they need. I think when you look at particularly this year, what they took in Jalen Waddle is a very unpolished, extremely talented wide receiver, but not the pro-ready style wide receiver they would have gotten from, say, a Devonta Smith, who is one of the best pass route runners I've ever seen in college, just completely polished. I think Waddle is the opposite. I think he's going to be a breakaway play, but certainly needs a little bit of work. I think when you're relying on a running game of just Gaskin, who has proven to be effective when in there, but is certainly an undersized back and not exactly a game breaker. And then that leaves you with Mike Gesicki, who you all know how I feel.
We know your take on Mike Gesicki.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's a tight end one.
Yeah.
Not the tight end one in the NFL.
He's a tight end in the NFL, yeah. And I think
he kind of isn't. He's actually a slot wide receiver in the NFL.
He really, and now he's not, because they have a slot wide receiver in Waddle. So now he's
a player in the NFL.
Yeah, now he's barely a player in the NFL, who will be replaced by Hunter Long next year.
Yes.
But, so where we're at is a whole lot of meh.
Yeah.
With the defense that I think is behind their counterpart in the Patriots. So when I put all that together, I'm trying to figure out what people are watching that makes them think that the Dolphins, who also have a more difficult schedule than the Patriots coming up, would be a better team. What you saw is what his own coach thinks of Tua by going to Fitzpatrick when they had to actually make plays. That's frightening to me. So I think Tua will develop into a mid-range NFL quarterback. I just don't see him being a guy who's going to put a team on his back. And if he doesn't, I don't think this Dolphins team is good enough to make things happen.
Anytime I hear Mike say that's frightening to me, I just laugh, because it just makes no sense. There's this big dude that ends up, pumping weights, so this stuff is afraid of something. But
I'm afraid of Tua getting pulled out of the game when I need him. And hillbillies, you know that, and clowns. I'm scared of clowns.
They also have they have one of the best backups in the league again. So I wouldn't rule out Tua getting pulled. Jacoby Brissett's plenty capable.
Oh my God. Sit there looking at it. I think that last year when they pulled Tua out of the game, I think it was more precautionary instead of, sitting there and looking at, this is.
Like it was a precaution against losing?
Yeah, they were hoping not to lose.
No. But I think that they don't want him, taking 7-step drops and getting teed off on, trying to throw 20-yard passes down the field with a subpar offensive line. That's why they put in Fitzpatrick. It's because, number one, Fitzpatrick has the experience and can run a 2-minute offense probably better than almost anybody in the league outside of the, Tom Brady's and Aaron Rodgers type players. But, I mean, he's phenomenal to run the 2-minute offense. Meanwhile, you have a guy who is tough and can take hits in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Tua was dealing with the hip injury. If he got teed off on, got hit right in the hip on a 7-step drop. I mean, I don't think he took any 7-step drops throughout the entire season in 2020. That's how little they trusted his hip. They were pretty much getting him used to, the offense and used to the way that they're going to run their system. So I think that the play calling is going to be different. They're already pumping the ball down the field. We saw it with the 5-interception practice day in the pouring down rain where, everybody's like, he's trying to throw it downfield. He keeps on. Yes, that's because they're trying to install a new offense for Tua Tagovailoa, coming into Miami. So as they talked about, of the beat reporters, that is, as the beat reporters have talked about, this camp so far, he's looked a lot better throwing the ball downfield, getting it to Will Fuller prior to the injury, getting it to Waddle, to an extent. Even he ended up hitting somebody deep earlier today.
Albert Wilson, bird alert.
Albert Wilson.
Yeah, it was Albert
Wilson. Wide receiver one, Albert Wilson.
I love the bird alert. Him and Breida, I love them both. I wasted a lot of fab on them, and then dropped them, and then put more fab on them, and then dropped them again and put more fab on them.
God, is Albert Wilson the equivalent of Humphreys or what? Adam Humphreys? Like, are they
he's better than Adam Humphreys.
They're the same player.
He's better than Adam Humphreys. He's got wheels, bro. Bird alerts has wheels.
Yeah, he's the man.
Look, I think with Tua, I'm a Tua optimist this season. I think especially where he goes, in both Dynasty, but especially in redraft, it's like at least he has a little bit of upside. I think it's pretty easy to paint yourself a picture of how Tua at least could really progress. He was a very highly touted prospect. He was coming off an injury last year. He had horrendous weapons last year, right? Like the weapons were so bad that he made Mike Gesicki a volume target, right? So he had, right, he was throwing to Jakeem the Dream Grant, He was throwing to Mike Gesicki. He's throwing to Durham Smythe. He was throwing to Lynn Bowden, who was playing quarterback a year prior. That he was playing running back for the Raiders. All of a sudden, he's a wide receiver for the Dolphins. It's a mess. I'm pretty pro Tua, especially with the weapons. I agree with you, Mike. I think that the Waddle pick was a disaster. And I don't say that as in that Waddle will be a disaster. I don't think that he's a disaster, but I think it was a disaster in the sense that they could have just stayed where they were. They could have picked Bateman. They could have moved up for a third, picked Smith. They could have, moved back and picked Bateman. I think that both those guys are clearly better players than Jalen Waddle, in my opinion, especially better year one. I think Waddle brings really, really interesting things to an offense. But I don't think that he is that alpha target hog wide receiver, at least not yet. I do love Will Fuller. Always risky, whether he can stay healthy. But I think that people had a misperception of what Will Fuller was, because of all the injuries, where they felt like he was just a run 9 routes kind of guy. But he had drawn a decent amount of volume even prior to last year, and he was fantastic for the Texans last year. I know it was with Deshaun Watson, but he was fantastic last year. Trust me, whether you look at just the stats, whether you look at the tape, he was a legitimately fantastic player. If he stays healthy, I think that he is going to be that alpha wide receiver for Miami, at least this year. I don't know what to expect out of Parker Gesicki. Frankly, I think Gesicki's not going to play actually very much at all if all three are healthy, because he can't block for shit. He literally is incapable of it. And if they have all three of the healthy wide receivers, what are you going to do? You're going to line up Mike Gesicki in line. Everyone knows it's a pass play the second you do that, because he's never going to run block. I think he's going to play 30% of the snaps. I haven't drafted him at all this year. I want nothing to do with Mike Gesicki. I think that it's still a solid offense, though, overall, or at least could be. I can paint a picture of it, and for seasonal formats, I think it's worth taking a shot on Tua in tournaments. But we'll see whether it actually amounts to what it could be. There's a lot of ifs involved in Miami.
That I'm sitting there and watching the film, and I really couldn't find a difference between Waddle and Fuller. I feel like they're almost the same exact player. I mean, they're contested catch rates, everything from their separation, their ability to play out of slot and on the outside to an extent. I feel like they're very, very identical players. So Waddle might actually not get as much playing time as what we're expecting, although they will get him snaps. They're going to get him snaps. They're going to have packages for him. He might not be a hit up until Fuller leaves, to be honest.
Who would play then? Do you think they would play Parker, Fuller, Gesicki, or do you think they'd play Preston Williams? And then who's playing because Preston Williams is not a slot guy. Preston Williams is only playing outside.
Preston Williams is done, in my opinion. I think that Gesicki sees one more year of slot snaps before he gets, cast aside and never seen again in the NFL. But for now, I think on first downs, you're going to see a lot of, first and second downs, depending on what they gain on first down, you're going to see a lot of snaps with Waddle in there. But I think once they get into those, third and short situations, or third and even 5 or 6 yards, I think you're going to see a lot of Gesicki who can convert those third downs, being the bigger target.
Gesicki just frustrates me, man. I had such high hopes. I had such high hopes. I loved him coming out of college, right? Tight end is the one position where we know that athleticism actually does matter. And it's awesome. We get this dude who gets drafted the second round to a place with no firm targets. And, he can just he can come in, he can be an athletic freak, he can run those seam routes. It's fuck, man. Why does he have to suck so much? It's infuriating.
All right, you know how much I talk about Colin Johnson and Donovan Peoples-Jones and all these other sleepers, Benjamin and stuff. Mike talked about how much he hated Gesicki.
I know. That's his whole brand.
More often than I talked about all of my, sleepers combined, because every time I brought him up, it had to be a rant about how, this guy's athletic, but he still has to know how to play football, and he does not know how to play football.
It's just hard to watch him, man. He could be so much better.
A guy goes near him, boom, he's down. He has not broken a tackle in his life. He just hasn't. For a tight end, that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that you call yourself a tight end and cannot break a tackle. So I'm sure you're a great human, Mike Gesicki. I don't dislike you as a person. But as a football player, not for me. Yeah.
All right, last team in this division. Definitely the worst team in this division, but maybe the most interesting just in terms of all the different balls of the air. It's the New York Jets. This is, the only other rookie quarterback aside from Trevor Lawrence that I think we're all pretty much 100% confident will be taking the week 1 start, because they have the worst quarterback room on planet Earth outside of Zach Wilson. It's James Morgan, and I actually don't even know who the other guy is. Whatever. We don't care about them.
What are they doing?
Nothing. They're doing nothing.
All right, first off, you're fucking around with this contract. right? And not signing him off the bat because of some, guarantees that don't even matter because guess what? You make billions of dollars. And yet you don't even have backups where you can threaten him like, oh, we're not going to give you this money because guess what? We got James Morgan to take your job.
We got the captain.
What is happening over there?
Well, they're the Jets. But there's one guy who's been turning heads. I don't know if you've heard about him. It seems like nobody's talking about Elijah Moore. But he can have a really good season.
Yeah, nobody has mentioned that name all offseason. I didn't even know he was playing football still.
Are we actually living in a world where Elijah Moore could be the number one Jets wide receiver this year? I'm still a Corey Davis guy. I'm the only guy left, I think, especially in nerd Twitter, that I still like Corey Davis more than Elijah for this year. But how do we see this wide receiver room shaking out? There's Corey Davis there that they signed. There's Elijah Moore. There's Jameson Crowder got restructured. Keelan Cole's running with the starters. And then Denzel Mims may or may not be alive. I don't mean for fantasy. I mean like as a human. Like he might actually be dead. Braxton Berrios. Who the hell is going to play for the Jets? Who's going to lead this team in targets?
So I'm going to pass one to Mike. But first, I have to say that Corey Davis is the wide receiver version of Mike Gesicki. So go ahead, Mike. You're good.
Yeah, it's Jameson Crowder.
Better than
Gesicki. I've never had an easier read on target share than the Jets, and it will be Jameson Crowder for every game that he steps on the field and he's healthy. He will take a lion's share of targets, just like he did last year, just like he did the year before that, and the year before that. I think that Elijah Moore is a great fit for Zach Wilson long term. I think he's an outstanding player, but he's got to work on a few pieces of his game. He's a big time playmaker, but again, we need to see what he can do against bigger cornerbacks. He is obviously a smaller player. That's not to say he can't do it. I absolutely think he can. I think too often people confuse can with has. He didn't do it a lot, but then again, a lot of these wide receivers were being utilized the same way, bubble screens behind the line of scrimmage, because that was winning their team's football games. So I've had talks with a lot of people smarter than me, who believe he will be able to get off of press coverage. I have no reason to think he won't. He just did something he's going to have to show in his game. But Jameson Crowder is an outstanding NFL wide receiver. Make no bones about it, he is their alpha and has every reason to be their alpha and has proven to be their alpha. Take a look back last year when he was healthy and look at the numbers he was putting up. I mean, he was getting 14 to 17 targets a game, and he was putting up triple digits. He was lighting the world on fire before he got hurt. So I don't know why this would be a big concern for people on who's going to lead the team in targets. It'll be Crowder for as long as he's standing, which may only be 4 games, much like AJ Green, but those 4 games will be glorious. Once he goes out, man, I have no idea. Honestly, if you are relying on anybody in this passing offense when Crowder goes out, you are a bolder person than I am. I'm not touching any of them, except for in Dynasty, obviously, where I will love some Elijah Moore, and I think he'll grow into be a Jameson Crowder type player. I just don't see anybody but Crowder this year being valuable.
Very interesting. The Jets are interesting to me in redraft because they are so cheap. They're so cheap. I mean, best ball ADP wise, you have Elijah is going just at the very end of the 9th, Corey Davis at the beginning of the 10th, Jameson Crowder all the way down in the 14th. And I like 2 of those guys are in my top 3 most rostered wide receivers on Underdog right now. It feels gross. Corey Davis being one of them and Jameson Crowder being the other. I agree with you, Mike. Well, kind of. I agree with you, kind of. I agree that Jameson Crowder is going to have a lot of targets. I agree he's going to be way more valuable than his cost suggests. I do think that Corey Davis is the wide receiver that will produce the most fantasy points when everybody's healthy. I just think Crowder's role is going to be Crowder's role in the slot. He's going to be guy converting 3rd downs. But I foresee a lot of 8-target, 6-catch, 50-yard games from Jameson Crowder. And that doesn't really get me all that excited in the morning. When I get up, I want a little bit more of life than Jameson Crowder's 8-6 for 50. When he was only competing with Brashad Perriman and Denzel Mims and Braxton Berrios, those 8-6 50s were 14-10 90s. And that got me very excited to get out of bed in the morning. I do think that Corey Davis has been forgotten about somehow. He had a fantastic season last year with Tennessee. He's not an incredible wide receiver by any means. It was fantastic. He was like one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL. And when he was playing with AJ Brown, he was a lot closer to AJ Brown than people realize. AJ Brown just scored way, way, way more touchdowns. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Corey Davis is as good as AJ Brown. I'm not trying to say anything blasphemous, but I am saying that I think he's a very, very good NFL wide receiver. The Jets definitely agree with me. That's why they paid him $37.5 million to come in and be a very good wide receiver. I'm not sure that he's like a 25% target share guy, but I could very easily see him pulling 20 to 22% of the targets, and I'm sure we'll probably have the highest depth of target between him and Moore and Crowder, as the guy who's going to be getting targeted deeper down the field versus the other guys. I think it's going to be a little bit of a small ball offense. So I'm very into Davis at cost. I think that he's going to outscore Moore, and he's cheaper than Moore, and I think he has actual legitimate upside with Davis. I'm a fan of Corey Davis. I apologize for it. I know people don't like to hear that.
I'm just glad you're on the same wavelength as the Jets. That's all. That's all I want to say. I'm glad that you're on the same wavelength.
Fuck. Yeah, that's not great.
Nope.
Tweet. Fuck.
So sitting there and looking at it, Jameson Crowder was the main wide receiver for Washington when Kyle Shanahan was in town, right? Or throughout this offense. I mean, sitting there and looking at it, they drafted him to be this slot guy. He was somewhat the slot guy, or at least towards the beginning of his career. Sitting there and looking at it, I think that Jameson Crowder in this offense could actually be better than what he was, because as a rookie when they worked him in, I think it was 2015 if I remember correctly. I think that he couldn't have played more like a Deebo Samuel type role, just without the athleticism and probably the same.
Without the athleticism is a great way of putting it.
It's
wonderful.
I mean, it is what it is. Like you're talking about, an athletic slot receiver who has quick twitch ability, can end up getting upfield and can actually run the ball, believe it or not, off of jet sweeps and whatnot. Sitting there and looking at it, though, I think that Elijah Moore was meant to have this role, and if he ends up playing on the outside, I'm out on Elijah Moore. If he ends up playing on the inside, I'm in, but that would have to take an injury to Jameson Crowder. That's not going to happen, unless he plays, I don't know, 70, 80% of the snaps minimum. I think that they end up switching them in and out, and I think that's why the rates are discounted for this Jets offense, is because I don't think any wide receiver is going to dominate snaps outside of Corey Davis. Sitting looking at it, I think they're going to alternate receivers in and out, and I think Dante Pettis is what we're looking at for the upside. For the upside, by the way, when Dante Pettis was playing well, for the upside of Jameson Crowder or Elijah Moore.
Dante, I did not think I'd hear Dante Pettis tonight.
Yeah, I mean, well,
is he still on your rosters, Chase? He feels like a guy that's kicking around right in between
He's
Devin
about
Duvernay
to break out with the Giants. This is his big chance.
No,
he might have a chance because I think 4 of them got injured in a brawl. So Dante Pettis might wake up as their wide receiver 1.
I think
Pettis was too slow to even get into the brawl. Good for him.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, we got through all the divisions today. Look, we thank you for talking with me. I didn't even realize we'd be going for 75 minutes. That's how much fun I was having with you guys. Mike, where can people find you? What are you up to these days?
So you can find me at Daddy's Home FF on Twitter, usually making fun of people. You can find me on the Aging Cooler, where I write a lifestyle blog. And you can also find me on DLF, where I will be launching a new show called Hanging with Daddy at the end of this month. And I will be doing interview shows with some of our favorite analysts, starting with Dynasty Outhouse, Cooter Doodle, Troy King, and Jake Trowbridge. We'll probably make it like a 10-part series to start out with, but DLF was nice enough to pick that up, so that'll be coming to a YouTube channel near you before the end of August.
That is awesome. Absolutely awesome. I will definitely be watching. I always love your stuff, Mike. I was super happy to have you on. And, when I first broke into this industry, to the extent that I've even broke into it now, you were one of the first people that really helped me out coming up, give me exposure, give me support, give me encouragement. So I always cherish the opportunity to talk with you, Mike, and thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This was a blast. And we'll see how many things we got wrong. And I'm sure we'll tweet about it afterwards, right? Like we always do.
Oh, yeah. Chase, where can we find you?
You guys go check us out over there. Join our circle __ on Twitter. You guys go check me out at
it takes you 2 tries every episode. You made the Twitter account.
I know, but I also have to cover like 20 other things. So I don't know why it does, but it does every time. You guys go find me over there at FF_intervention. You guys can go check out all of our content over there at fantasyintervention.com. Fantasyintervention.com. Once again, big shout out to Fantasy Football Discussion over there on Facebook. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. Thank you for participating in the chat. And make sure you guys keep those questions going. Go check out our content out on YouTube, youtube.com/fantasyintervention. Once again, that's youtube.com/fantasy intervention. I have a big announcement coming on Thursday. Very excited for that. We're going to be launching off the same thing we launched off last year. Actually, today is the anniversary that I launched it off, but I'm waiting to launch it on Thursday just so I make sure I have enough time to answer the questions. So make sure you guys tune into all those channels for Thursday.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot, Chase. And you can find me on Twitter, FF_RTDB. You can find my written work up on Player Profiler. My last piece finished off a series I've been doing on lessons from DFS into best ball. You can find me talking basketball pretty much 24/7 on Twitter. The Puppy 2 just launched, so I've been rolling through lineups, rolling through takes, all to do with the Puppy 2. What's up, Chase?
How have we not ended up in one best ball together yet? I'm very confused because I know we have.
What time do you draft at, like 3 a.m.? Do you do slow drafts?
I don't. I do quick drafts.
I don't know that. I have no idea. I've done 156 best ball drafts. I don't understand. I haven't seen you in any of them.
Holy shit, Jacob! How do you know you have a problem?
Yeah, you might need help, bro.
Dude, that's
$500 minimum invested in best ball drafts.
Oh, it's much more than that because I'm not going to share how many of those are in the $25 best ball mania.
Oh God!
When I say that I pay for law school through fantasy football winnings, I'm not like lying. Like it's true. Like between best ball and DFS, this is my part-time job right here.
That's it.
So I'm very straight up about it. No, we're drafting best ball. We're talking best ball. We're writing about best ball for Player Profile. You can find me on Fridays for the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast. Except for this week. This week, of course, we have one of Mike's good old friends joining us on Saturday at noon. We have Fantasy_Mansion, the Podfather, is joining us for a special edition of the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast on Saturday this week. And then you'll be able to find me on Tuesday next week. We have a double shot. I will be on Early Risers, which is Cody Carpentier's show at 8 Eastern. And then we'll be hopping right back with Cody and Chase and Shane on Dynasty Intervention right after. So a little Tuesday night doubleheader with you. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chase. Thank you, Fantasy Football Discussion. Thank you, YouTube people, Periscope people, Twitter people, all people. Have a good one. See ya.